Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, it's my pleasure to invite you all. It's Krishna Vedula from University of Massachusetts Lowell. This is part of our global series. I'm just going to quickly get to that point. Sorry, I'm messing around over here. I should be close my screen for a bit, and then get back to you in just a second. I'm just have to. Okay, just give me another minute. Okay, I'm back. So we have today our webinar number 7. In fact, wow, we've had quite a few webinars from UMass Lowell on entrepreneurship. This is coming to you from UMass Lowell, Jack Wilson Center for Entrepreneurship, and this today and this is a series on entrepreneurship, education, and the ecosystem. Today's is today that particular topic. Overall, the webinars all focus on entrepreneurship and innovation education, and I'm going to let Professor Michael from UMass Lowell introduce our speaker in just a minute. So let me just give the screen over to him, and I'm sure you will have an excellent President Michael. Professor Michael is coming up. Okay, Professor Michael, click show my screen, and you're on to introduce the speaker for today. Yeah.
Great. I'll do that in just a second. Before I get to that, again, I'm Professor Michael Seach at UMass Lowell. Here I teach entrepreneurship innovation courses. I just want to give you a brief heads up as to our next upcoming webinar, which actually, in fact, I'll be hosting and conducting on crowdfunding research and practices on October 23rd, again, 9 o'clock Eastern, same as this one. And I'll be discussing both some research implications of crowdfunding, but then also how I use it in my own classroom to enrich the students' experience through some experiential learning. And then following that, on November 6th, we'll have another, the next webinar will be Emerging Technologies, Entrepreneurial Opportunities. And as always, you can contact Professor Mehta here at UMass Lowell.
Can you put the full screen up? It's not showing the full screen. Maybe you just want, I think, the other screen.
Okay. Sure.
Change the screen, yeah. I mean, they can still see it. It's just, takes a little. Yeah, there you go. Now full screen mode. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Yeah.
All right. Full screen now.
That they can see it. That's fine. That's great. Go ahead. Yeah.
All right. So let me get to then the topic of today's presentation or webinar. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce Dr. Nitin Kulkarni from KLE. I've had the pleasure of working with him both over in Hubli at his host institution. I've been over there twice now for our winter GEP program. And then also I've probably been involved with him, not since the very beginning, since he's been coming to UMass Lowell, but shortly thereafter. So I've had the pleasure again to host him on the UMass Lowell campus multiple times, where again, we've done this extensive 2-week entrepreneurship immersion class. And so it's been my great pleasure to introduce Dr. Nitin Kulkarni, who's going to be telling you all about the ecosystem that they have over there at KLE.
Okay, so I'm going to give this over to Nitin. I'm going to make Nitin the presenter. Over to you, Nitin.
All right. Hang on, I'm just trying to bring my screen up.
Done.
Can you all see the screen?
Yes, we can. Thanks. Go ahead.
Okay, good. Thank you. Good morning, good evening to all of you. Thanks for joining me today the webinar on entrepreneurship education and ecosystem. I come from KLE Technological University based in Hubli, and we are a 72-year-old engineering education institution in the northern part of Karnataka, which I will get to it very quickly. And for almost last 65 years, we were a faithful undergraduate education provider in engineering in this region. However, around over 7 years ago, we started thinking, what can we do beyond the teaching learning process? And one logical outcome of that thought came is how shall we engage our students who are eventually going to be engineering graduates into something beyond job seekers. So we started looking around and then realized that the time is now, and that led to what we call as KLE Center for Technology, Innovation and Entrepreneurship, in short, KLE-CTI. I'm Dr. Nitin Kulkarni, the director of this unit, and essentially we are looking at spearheading technology entrepreneurship in a tier 2 city because they have their own challenge. And having come from this region, I realized that it is more of a uphill task than anything else because there are a lot of challenges around here. And then I will just walk you through our experience and what is the learning in the process and how anybody who would like to consider starting such ventures in their campuses can benefit from it. So for all of you who would be wondering where Hubli is, Hubli is in the state of Karnataka in South India. We are a northern part of Karnataka. Naturally, we are sort of, though we are in Karnataka, the state of Karnataka, we don't really look like different challenges in the sense
Are we having a little bandwidth issues there, Nitin? You're losing your voice once in a way. Nitin? Being in a small town, sometimes they have bandwidth issues. Hello, Nitin? Oops, he went offline, so he'll have to come back in. I'll have to email, I'll just send him an email. He has, I'll have to send him an email asking him to sign in. Hopefully he will do that.
in a place like Hubli. So what does Hubli signify? Why is it important? The reason is many of the audience probably are not from the big cities like a metros or tier 1 cities. So I am actually resonating their experience here when I list out these things. So Hubli signifies really a tier 2 or a tier 3 city, depending upon how you look at it. And one major aspect, especially for the engineering graduates, is a lack of industrial ecosystem. So natural progression for a graduate is to get into business or industry and then make his or her career, but that wasn't available here locally. And essentially what that led to is for almost all these younger generation from last decade or so, the industrial system was not relevant and didn't make any impact on their decision-making process. So we were having old world industries in Hubli, but they never could connect with the the wants and needs of the fresh engineering graduates, especially from the latest generation, if you will. And then that has led to even industries hesitating to come to this region because of logistic reasons, as well as for the lack of better complementing setup here in Hubli. So if you look into these things, a place like Hubli is not just alone in itself. India, and I'm sure many countries in the world, has many such Hublis in their countries, and they possibly share majorly the challenges that I have mentioned here. So what I'm trying to arrive at is there is a ground level challenge in sort of spearheading or even taking a traction in terms of starting industrial ecosystem or a business ecosystem in the region. So what am I going to talk about today? To quickly touch upon, I will talk about the genesis of KLE CTI. What was the motive and the drive, and how did it impact, and why is it essential? And also, it wasn't easy, as I mentioned earlier. We were facing a substantial number of challenges, and we started looking at others to see how they have managed or cope up with such kind of challenges. And in some places, we could get some quick learnings, and some places we had to look for homegrown solutions. And one question that I typically recommend everybody to ask, if at all they are undertaking entrepreneurship on campus, is to why campus entrepreneurship, or why now? And how does it matter if you have one? And based on our experience, I'm going to share what we could do, and then how the similar experience can help somebody to quickly ramp up on such activities. I'll quickly talk upon the model against which this whole setup has been built, and how is it little bit having a localized flavor just to suit the local environments or the strengths, if you will. Facilities which essentially are the driving factors, or what we call as the low-hanging fruit for the startups. So I will just quickly touch upon what are those, and then how that is being handled here. Uh, for anything that we do, there got to be some kind of outcome, and the outcomes, if they are matching up with the vision with which we start certain things, then naturally, it's essentially said that the purpose is served. So in terms of impact on and outside of the campus, how that has helped us to gain some confidence, and then some what do you call credibility, I'm going to talk with reference to that in the impact section. And lastly, would like to summarize it as to, in this whole process of over 7 years now, what have we learned, and then how that learning has helped us to assist somebody or help somebody even to take their efforts to a further level. Lastly, at the fag end of this presentation, I would be happy to answer any questions that the audience may have. So I had mentioned, typically, if you can realize that an industrially backward city would have fewer opportunities. That means lack of employment opportunities. It's sort of a natural outcome of industrially backward setup, and that further leads to graduates to look for a greener pastures or better opportunities, and it further leads to decline in the local competitiveness. So this, if you could see, it's a vicious cycle. It keeps feeding on itself, and I am the first-hand person of experiencing this in a place like Hubli, which is here. Hardly any development has happened in last 20 years, and then it's amazing how people just seek opportunities elsewhere and then go, and something has to be done to arrest this. And we also did a quick survey a few years ago, and to our astonishment, we found that about 98% of the engineering graduates move out of this place, and in the non-engineering graduates, about 90% of them look for opportunities outside and migrate to either larger cities or beyond. So this is definitely a big challenge, because it is impacting the social fabric of the local region here, and we are actually the witness to those kind of changes as we go along. Now, what that realization led to is made us ask certain questions. Some of these questions that we started putting to ourselves was, if at all we have an entity called this technology incubator, or something that you may want to call, in this case I have used CTI itself, can it or will it have an impact in the Hubli, Dharwad, the Twin City area, or the local area, in terms of creating entrepreneurial ecosystem? Is it really possible given the current situation of the place where we are in? Because we are not sure whether it's going to really work. And also, since we are still an undergraduate focused teaching learning institution, somehow can this business ecosystem around us be used to leverage the student learning experience? Ultimately, understand that over 6,000 students come here and then they study. And how do you ensure that any activity that gets done on campus essentially adds certain value to students being here for 4 years or beyond? And that was also one of the questions that was not very clear to us when we started answering these things to ourselves. Lastly, on a larger scale, if you see, could we possibly create in the process based on our learnings, a model that can be replicated across any tier 2 or tier 3 city in India. It was more of a hypothetical question, but we thought that we should get to a level that where we will be comfortable enough to share our story with somebody. And that's precisely where some of the questions that we started with over 7.5 years ago. And these questions, if you look into, led to certain realistic challenges. So aspiration is one thing, and how do we get to achieve those aspirations is a whole different challenge that we faced. The reason was our intentions were all good, and it sounded pretty relevant to what we are planning to do. However, when we looked around, we couldn't find any successful incubation model that we could quickly emulate. What does this mean? Any higher education organization or institution within India that we could quickly go and then say, look, we would like to learn from you, and then sort of translate those learnings to Hubli Dharwad region wasn't really the case. And also, we were not very sure of one thing, that even if we have a successful model, would it really be impactful enough on the regional economy? Because these are again the questions, and then further, if you draw down, these were some of the challenges that we were seeing. And lastly, if some of the teachers who have joined can understand, there is always this doubt in the mind of people that anything that is developed on the campus, is it really good enough to market commercially? So if you can understand, anybody who starts from ground zero would naturally have a lot of plans in the head, essentially, but would be facing tons of such challenges and doubts in the mind. And that is precisely how we started. What does this essentially say is we didn't have any 100% clarity in terms of how it's going to go. But thanks to my Vice Chancellor, Professor Ashok Shettar, who was always of the opinion that, if we can plan enough and then focus more on the execution, there is a good chance that we could hit the bullseye. And that is precisely what the notion that we carried across for all these years. So the question now always comes, why talk about entrepreneurship ecosystem through campus incubators? What is in there for the stakeholders in the process? Let me just walk you through. These are pretty openly known issues, but I would like to connect our experience to some of these reasons as to why campus incubators makes perfect sense. The first one is incubators build the culture of innovation, innovative disruption. We all know that today somebody who thinks beyond the standard process of thinking or lateral thinking, whatever that you want to call, has a fair chance of being successful. Well, how do you inculcate this thought process in the mind of a student? When 4-year program is set, the syllabus and the curricula is well defined, pre-distributed. How do you build in this culture of thinking different? But guess what happened? Over 10 years being in this campus, Sankalp Semiconductor, which started with a group of people on our campus, actually made it to over 900 people, and just recently was acquired by HCL for about 180 crores. Navya Biological started by 2 people, again on the campus, had a challenge all the way through, but today they are close to 300 crore company in the region, and looking to hire about 1,500 people. And this is all happening in Hubli. So essentially, what I would like to allude to is innovation, and the culture of innovation is something that we can definitely bring by having players who are focused on creating value on campus, and that has been our experience. And on the next one, the incubators essentially help nurture commercially viable innovation. What does this mean? Projects are okay, but can ever the projects be transformed into products, and the products have a market potential where they can be commercially sold, and the monetization process is experienced? And that is precisely what campus incubators showcase and are the witness to such kind of development. What example do I have? There is a startup called Biosil Technologies, started by the biotech graduates. They came up with this milk preservative or milk adulteration testing kit. About 52,000 of them have been already sold, and they recently bagged an order for about 50,000 more for the next quarter. Essentially tests milk for many ingredients which are not supposed to be in there. Now, at home, if a mother wants to feed her child with milk, wouldn't that be better to ensure that there is nothing like urea or starch or sugar or detergent being added to that? So which otherwise, except for the fat checking process of which we could actually see being done to check how clear the milk is or the water addition to that, but now the consumer has the entire suite of tools available to him or her to check the quality of the milk that is being consumed in the household. So now understand an idea with the culture around the campus ultimately helps to transform an innovation into commercially viable product, and that is precisely, I would say, the greatest advantage of having a campus incubator. The third one is incubators have bridged the gap between ideation and then viable business. This is always been a challenge. Ideation is great because we all have thousands of ideas, but eventually how many of such ideas have the potential to become a business? And this is extremely difficult to sort of estimate, because depends on idea, the person, the ecosystem and surroundings and other so many factors associated with that. But take a look at this. This AHA drone, which was developed by Skycraft Aerospace, which won, by the way, the bronze award, bronze design award globally. And what they are planning to do is they saw this niche in the requirement, wherein this cardboard drone, which comes in a set of 8 such drones, can now be assembled at home. You can be programmed based on your caliber because it uses Arduino and Raspberry Pi based controller, and it's an open source design. So what does this essentially tells that drones are there, they are exciting people across the globe, but they saw this niche, and the innovation that they actually resorted to has made them understand that cardboard drones, which have a potential to fall down and then break, but they actually have a patented cardboard which essentially ensures that the stability is guaranteed, and even in a worst case scenario, if it lands in a water or some sort of terrain which is not healthy for its endurance, there are 7 more sets that the person can build and then use it. So essentially drives the idea in the mind to the product which eventually reaches to the customer, and this is a great example of that according to me. And the next one is, they essentially provide infrastructure, feedback, mentor to firm up innovation. One thing that I have seen is there are many young entrepreneurs who come across, and then they always have this tech mindset. They have a problem, they think they have a right kind of technology, and they would like to just get onto it and then start developing a solution. And they are not as much concerned about the infrastructure facilities and then the mentorship and the innovation and then the growth of that in the initial phases. So the infrastructure of the incubator must provide for basic level of comfort to the startups and eventually take care of them so that they can continue to stay focused on the innovation and eventually productization of that. And the next one is incubators are crucial in developing wider business ecosystem in any country. I think this we have witnessed, especially with India, because since 5-6 years at the global innovation and entrepreneurship program, I present about the changing India's changing technology innovation ecosystem, and I have found that we quickly moved from 5th place to the 3rd place, and we are neck to neck with the 2nd place player in developing startups, because as we all know, the startups essentially drive innovation, they drive value, and they drive a sense of confidence in the minds of youngsters, which I think any country can use. And I think that is precisely what campus incubators can help facilitate. Lastly, these are the ones who have a potential to create value for future consumption through innovation. And I know we are never happy with the status quo. So naturally, the world is looking up to engineers to bring in changes, which is ecologically responsible and probably take care of the future generation. And hopefully, if that value process gets added to the innovation process, I think we will be able to see some great products coming in the future, and campus can be a cradle for such kind of innovations going forward. So great idea, great aspiration, but how did we do it? The strategy is essentially a 2-pronged approach, when we thought that to gain credibility in the eyes of startups or entrepreneurs. As a education institution, it's extremely difficult because we are known for classrooms, teachers, students, and then the supported staff. However, how do you suddenly change and then say that, okay, by the way, we also do startups or entrepreneurship? So we thought that the best way to do is build some quick successes. So we thought of attracting and supporting external entrepreneurs who essentially either are from this place or have some sort of advantage that they see here, and then have them come and then start their business here. So initially we started giving them physical space, and then we started adding the additional value system to help them out. And this, over a period of time, it took almost 2.5 years for us to build this ecosystem that students started noticing. And pretty soon students started connecting by design to these startups, either through projects or internships, or even to go beyond in terms of jobs. So apart from having a presence of startups on campus, students were also now were inspired, enthused, and educated about startups and the culture of startup, essentially what we call as entrepreneurship learning or entrepreneurial thinking. How can we think in a manner that I create more value to what I do and sort of solve somebody's problem? Now understand, this is more of a cultural situation that we need to improve at the students level, and I think it has happened only because of the presence of startups on the campus. And this is typically represents our strategy that we have followed along at KLE Technological University. So when we set out to do this, we had certain idea in mind. First, as you know, the genesis of that was to create job, right? So we thought that we should be able to create jobs in various fields of engineering, so that the students after graduation wouldn't want to go out leaving their family behind, and they can still get the challenges that they would seek in some other place, but they can be in Hubli. The second part is very critical because we all know that India is a great importer of what you call as the hardware products. So much so that 2022, we are estimated to go beyond the oil import, which is the largest at this point of time. So at one point of time, we started thinking, is there a possibility that we can slowly start ramping up our capabilities as far as started producing products for the world market? Tall order, but somewhere it has to start, and that has been one of the mandate as we go along, and I will quickly talk about some of the examples going forward. And finally, focused specific electronic product development in the area of VLSI or ESDM was also sought through, such that with three major outcomes that we were anticipating to make some change in, we started looking into the target areas as as close as automotive to smart communication, and surveillance and security to agrotech. So now you understand, with 7 engineering schools, we couldn't be sort of keeping away from any specific sector. So we said that any sector is okay as long as it sort of takes care of the top 3, which is job creation, world-class product development, and possibly in the electronic domain or the hardware domain. And that is how we started. So it's more of an open-ended canvas, if you will. So where are we today? The KLE CETA Incubation Center today has over 34,000 square feet of working space. And the focus is still on pre-incubation and early stage growth startups. The reason is most of the students inflow is at the pre-incubation level, and we would be able to comfortably take them to the growth stage. And beyond that, of course, there is an ecosystem where they can be part of, where they can go and then see how they can scale up and then prosper. Again, we work with students and faculty startups. In the university, there is a policy now which openly supports faculties to undertake startups, either as a partner or as a co-founder or as a mentor in whatever scope they find is appropriate, so that it is encouraged and faculty can now start bringing that learning into the classroom. Finally, there are a lot of such back-end research centers into deep tech area, wherein they have front end in the most of the larger cities for sales, marketing, and then customer connect, whereas the back end research happens in Hubli at KLE CETA, which is working out really well for quite a few startups that we have seen. And one other reason why that is been, in fact, our selling point is because most of these back research center require some real brilliant and smart kids which our undergraduate students really cater to very well, and that is why we can see substantial differentiator in terms of having such kind of facilities on campus. And as we all know, incubators are supposed to provide certain specific services to the startups, and as you probably have guessed it, it mostly considering the legal requirement, administrative and accounting support, as well as IP support. Most of these are provided, and the mentorship is the area where we are ramping up. We still have good challenges in that area, because as you know, the mentors typically are where these are the major hubs of startups are in there. So we are trying to connect using technology, and then to some extent it is working, but we still have a good amount of challenge on our plate as far as enhancing the value addition is concerned. But I guess the start has been made. Now it's for us to take it beyond where it is, because now the government policies are also very much in support of such activities at various campuses across the country. So naturally it is helping us quite a bit. So this is just a small pictorial representation of our ESDM Incubation Center. Just I have tried to show you how the interiors look. Essentially, this caters to the electronic products, and naturally, they have access to the software tools, and then the design and testing facilities, power backups, and all those kind of things are in there. But the biggest selling point is now in Hubli, you can see end-to-end electronic hardware product realization, which was almost unthinkable a few years ago. So what are some of the other facilities that augment and complement to this setup in ESDM? I will quickly come to that in the next few slides. Some of the product development support, because understand our major inflow is engineering students or engineering fraternity. Naturally, products or services, those services are fairly easy to conceive and then deploy. Products are the one which have a longer lead time and require substantial amount of ecosystem support. So the maker space is about 10,000 square feet, caters to most of the mechanical product development requirements. The good part of this is most of these operations are performed by industry experienced people. So naturally, you really don't have to learn the hard way. Whenever you are in time crunch, and then you need to get the product out or for testing or whatever the purpose is. And the pricing model is extremely affordable. One good part of that is if you walk in with an idea or a concept, it is very easy for you to expect to walk out with at least the POC or the prototype that you can think of for your product. Likewise, on the electronic domain, we have this EEL, Electronics Enabling Lab. Just started, it's a new kid on the block, wherein we do pre-certification for the various wireless standards. Just going to start the business in a week's time. Pretty much every piece of the puzzle is in the game. This is done with the help of the generous fundings from the Department of Science and Technology. And right now, as I had mentioned earlier, with the conception of the product, design, development, and testing, and either take it to the market or go back to your drawing board, that entire process can be witnessed in Hubli. And I think that is a fabulous opportunity for electronic startups, because it not only compresses time, but it substantially saves them money, which is a key consideration when it comes to building a brand new product and then taking it to the market. So having seen this, what did we realize, or what did we visualize in terms of the outcomes after close to about 7.5 years? I can comfortably share this with you. We had 73 companies incubated, then from almost all sectors that you can imagine. And we have added over 600 jobs in the region, which I think is one of the quite noteworthy thing that we have done, because this is probably by far the largest job addition that one single entity has done in the region. And that means we are staying faithful to our vision with which we started it. Incidentally, when we look back, over 24 student startups have sprung up. And this is really of great interest to us, because this was absolutely absent 7 years ago. But now we are seeing that this has become almost mainstream. And I think that can really provide a substantial reward as we all know. Let's see, leadership quality has gone up, the numbers have gone up. because most of the students are in our backyard, and it can be tracked, and the work can be managed effectively. So I think there is a lot of comfort zone with the faculty who works with the students and the startups, ensuring that quality internships happen on our campus without so if I can just summarize this whole. Now, I had mentioned that KLE tech startups are used as role models and eventually use their presence on campus to influence the student community. And the student community goes through various formal and informal interventions. And I had mentioned few of them here. The purpose of putting these things is very simple, that most of these activities that are you are seeing here, except for the capstone track, all have no credits. And they have been running from last 7 years, and by far the most popular activities on campus. And incidentally, they are all managed by the student front of KLE, which they call themselves as Make in BVB or MIB. And these student teams essentially drive most of these activities on campus. And at one point of time, we thought that we need to formally inculcate entrepreneurship in education. So we have this minor program in entrepreneurship, wherein over 15 credit students will formally learn about the nuances of starting a business, and they actually will start taking an idea and then moving forward with starting an incubation, their startup in our incubation. And this is how the program is designed. And we do not have any restrictions in terms of who can come and then work with us. So first year to final year students all are welcome to be part, to be be a part of us. And at one point of time, we thought that it's important for the students to understand what is happening across the globe. Great, 4-year engineering education, post that you get a job or you go for higher studies, but how would you sort of map yourself with your fellow peer in a different country? So incidentally, with the University of Massachusetts, we have started this global entrepreneurship and innovation, which the 18th one will be happening in Hubli in the month of December, January, just like every year. So the students here work in multicultural, multidisciplinary teams to understand if the technology solution is envisaged. How do you take the technology solution and then make it business worthy, which, if you can recall, most of the engineering institution, that is hardly done. So we are actually connecting the two extremes, that think of a problem, develop a solution, and eventually think of what does it take to take it to the market. And that's precisely what is done over this 2 weeks of program. Over 1,000 students have gone through this program. It's one of the most sought after program on the campus as well. So just quick numbers. Pupa, which started in 2013 with 18 teams. This year on October 19th, we have the final D-Day. We have 417 teams registered from 30 different institutions. And likewise, ideation can walk them through step-by-step approach from ideation all the way up to pitching. And finally, Butterfly, where it's a technology business idea. The good thing of all this is, from all these programs, which are informal interventions, that means there are no credits to it, we have seen students startup ideas coming. So what it tells us essentially as a teacher, what are we learning is, all they need is an ecosystem and a thought process. I think students will follow along, and then they will be partnering with us for taking their ideas beyond an idea and then into potentially a startup. Some of the pictures of these activities over the years. So I had challenges. If you recall, in my early slides, no successful incubation model in the context of innovation. Campus incubation impact on the regional economy, we were not very sure. And rarity of successful and marketable products from the campus. These are the 3 challenges that I had shown earlier. So let's see what is happening. The first challenge of no successful incubation model. Today, I think after 7.5 years, we currently have about 33 tech startups. Many have graduated and gone, many have closed their doors, but nonetheless, everyone has learned a lesson and everyone has taught us something very important. The most important aspect is student startups have started and they're scaling and growing. In fact, out of the 24 startups from students, we have 5 companies still are doing very well, and then they are growing. So might not be a great percentage success wise, but nonetheless, I think the beginning has been made. And also 8 companies now have graduated and moved to the tech park. In the process, we have been recognized as a technology business incubator by Government of India, which I think has helped us immensely in terms of connecting with other TBIs in the region. Second challenge that I had put was incubation impact on North Karnataka economy. Fine, student experience is one. What is beyond student experience? Now, just look at it, as I mentioned earlier, 600 plus jobs and 2 companies over 150 crores of valuation, which was absolutely unthinkable 10 years ago, but now it is a reality. So looking forward, we are hoping that at least in next 5 to 7 years, we should be able to see at least 2 to 5 such companies, which will grow from ground up all the way up to become at least 100 crore company in Hubli. This all has started. Activities have led to what we call as the innovation startup ecosystem. As I had mentioned, students' culture has been different. Faculty has been engaging more closely. Joint patents have been filed. So students are understanding the importance of creating an IP and how to be protected, which I think they learn by example rather than by going through the theory of it. The third and the last challenge that I had put was hardly any successful technology products coming from the campus. Today, the products made from LabinApp, one of the student startup, Navya Biological, GDV, these are all being sold across the globe. What does this mean? Hubli now can deliver products which are of global class and can be marketed across without the geography restrictions like the way it used to be earlier. And many of these startups are working in smart drones, IoT and related areas. Materials is picking up quite a bit of a pace. And of course, the ESDM based on what I had mentioned earlier. And also, as you can see, till recently, we were only a good teaching learning institution. Today, there has been a purposeful impetus given to research, and the faculty and the student research today is now seeing the light of the day, which eventually have a potential to be commercialized, and CETA can be a driver in helping it to go to the next level. I think that is a futuristic aspiration that we have as far as the role of CETA in an educational institution is concerned. So with doing this, what did we learn? We learned quite a bit. What we now know is it's better to start early for an institution to look into an incubator and run the incubator like a startup, which is a little difficult in terms of the philosophical differentiator that we need to bring in, but it is possible and it has rich dividends when we do that. Second one is it's always a great idea to have a strategic plans based on the endowments that we have as to why are we even thinking of a startup here and what is that it will take us to, how we can leverage the strengths that we have. I think that is very important as a part of the planning process, and it is essential for anybody to connect to some industry folks who have interest and then a passion to help develop this, which we were lucky enough to get, and at the same time some great academicians who are thinking beyond the obvious and are seeing the reason as to why it is important for a technology incubator to be present in the campus. I think that really helps. And we also learned that it is essential to tie in all the key stakeholders, students, faculty, and the community in a manner that they all feel that they are a part of it and they take some winning with them every time when they come together. I think this takes a while, but I think it had its own advantages and dividends to pay over a period of time. Uh, many of these startups need beyond space. That means many of the people that I have spoken to, they are of the understanding that if the space is given, I think the job is done. But I guess it just starts there. But one thing that I have found is, in my experience, space is the beginning, but developing a success formula for that particular startup in the domain that they are playing, I think is really essential, which involves mentors, support system, and investors, so that the company feels that they are not alone fighting against the odds of being successful. So now understand it is the incubator that can help make them feel quite comfortable as they move along this journey. Partnering is a key with service providers, with mentors, because they bring in consistent connect with the startups, which I think in the eye of a startup is a great point of credibility for the incubator. So I think that is one key thing that I cannot stress enough. Lastly, this is a long-term journey, and I think the journey is more important than the destination. Every bit of it has its own challenges, but I think at the end of the day, when we all sit back and over a cup of chai, when we start talking about the challenges that we faced and then the way we got through failures and successes, I think it all feels very good and fulfilling. So I think that is my last statement here as a part of this presentation. And I thank you all for your patient hearing. Appreciate it.
Wow, fantastic, Nitin. This is such an amazing, inspirational presentation about how you can do this in a small town, a case study that other people can scale up. Michael, would you like to follow up with some discussion with some comments of your own?
No, just to say that I, again, have been happy to be a part of the brief interactions I've had with Nitin and see what they've done on the Hubli campus. You know, the first time I think I went was maybe 2015, 2016, and the last time was just last winter. And just to see the amazing growth that they've experienced and what he's done, like he's told you about in the seminar today, I hope it does serve as maybe an inspiration to that you can bring a lot of what he's done to your own ecosystems and campuses. It's truly a great story. So again, thank you, Nitin, for sharing all that with us.
You're
Fantastic.
welcome.
Let me open it up for the participants to at least chat or text questions and so on. Let me start with Elsie. Would you like to jump in, Elsie Mayo?
Thank you very much. This was a marvelous presentation, so inspiring and very useful because you were very specific about your steps and how you went about it. I'm wondering, how is the incubator funded, structured, and staffed? You did talk a little bit about, I asked that question before you spoke a bit about the mentoring, et cetera, but in particular, what is the source of funding over different phases? And then the second question is, how does it incorporate the concerns and needs of the local community?
Okay. Since if you could remember, the incubators we focus on are more in a pre-incubation to growth stage. Many of them start as a bootstrapping. But incidentally, the local government have a couple of programs wherein the seed funding they can apply for, and they need to compete, of course, and they will choose certain the right startups to be the beneficiary of this seed funding, and that is going really well from last 3 years. Now, as far as if they cross that growth stage and then would like to now scale up and go, we will be eligible for the federal funding. Again, of course, based on the performance and the merit of the idea and then the track record of the startup, starting January of 2020, because we need to be 3-year-old, which we are only in their eyes, it's only about 3 months short than that. So we are hoping to leverage the local angel network, which we are already working in the Hubli Angels. Second one is the government, which is local as well as the state and the federal or the central level. And the third one is we actually have a series of these investors come and then have these startups get pitched to them. So based on the merit of the presentation and the team, majority of the times they will work parallelly to sort of get the funding that they are looking at. But understand, this is we have done first and the second step extremely comfortably, and I think I have at least first-hand experience and examples, whereas the third one, wherein venture capital is coming in and then getting invested into the startups, is just started, and I do not have any examples to share on that. It's just we are trying to work through as we go along. And as far as your second part of the question, which is the local community concerns, I'm not sure what concerns specifically we're alluding to. So if you can be a little bit more clear, I would be able to talk it out.
Well, thank you so much. So, yeah, you talked about increasing employment, 600 engineering jobs in the local community. I'm just wondering, different communities will have different priorities and needs, whether they're farming and they could use some particular assistance with irrigation, or I'm just looking at, is there a way that the needs of the local economy and the society influence the projects that the incubator emphasizes.
Yeah, good point. In fact, agri-tech is the area that we are trying to connect to the locals in a little bit more meaningful way. But I still see that the traction and the momentum isn't there yet, because understand the farming in India is on a shoestring budget. Hardly any money exists in there, number one. Number two, many of these engineering graduates, they are more tuned to think of a high-tech problem, which probably has a better visibility. Either it's a higher education in outside of India, or even getting a job somewhere. So naturally we have definitely certain challenges in that area. But having said that, I have some examples wherein students who have come from rural background and have seen their community suffer because of certain things have resorted to many of such innovations, which have become sort of startups, because now they have started marketing these products in the local area. So I see definitely a place for everybody in this game, because we have a lot of young engineers in the region. So any of this does not come at the cost of somebody else.
Okay, great. LC, anything else you want to follow up on? Great, thank you. I'm going to go to Venu Madhav Gopala. He had a question. I don't know if he's able to connect. Venu, can you speak up?
Yeah.
Venu Madhav, you want to join or not? I will unmute you. You had a question about the challenges. I guess you're not. Okay, he was asking about the major challenges while starting the EDC Cell Incubation Center. Now, I guess you've covered that, but maybe you can just recap a little bit about what some of the major challenges that you faced.
You asking me, Krishna?
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah. So
Okay, as I said, yeah, the major challenges that we faced, as I mentioned here, is the fact that such kind of thought process never existed here. The fact that a student can come here, join, and he or she can think of anything but a job was almost alien to the local people here, because many of them are from the lower middle class to middle class, and then they all have aspirations in having their son or daughter graduate and then go and take up a job. So sort of making them understand that value creation is an important aspect of a learning for an engineer definitely took, as I mentioned in my presentation also, for almost the first 2.5 years, hardly any student found this thing exciting. So we had to sort of forcefully connect the startups who were on campus to these students and understand that this is exciting. There is a lot of value in what these guys do. And it literally had to be done, because I remember going to my vice chancellor and saying that I don't think it's working on this campus. But he asked me to sort of be patient, because after all, education is a little bit slower in its moving. So how right he was. I could see that challenge sort of wither away over a few years, but definitely that was one of the challenge.
I think one of the things that going around to various institutions in India, engineering colleges like yours and second-tier institutions, I think the role played by the management and the owners and the administration is very critical. So what do you think in terms of your institution, the encouragement or the support given by the ownership, the management, and the senior administrators? What kind of comment would you have to give, or advice? What advice would you like to give from that direction to those of people who are attending today, who might be at the mid-level management administration and wondering how to make something like this happen on their campus?
Yeah, I think it's a great question, Krishna. This definitely is a top-down challenge. That means the management has to have a clear understanding as to what is this, why is this, and why now. Many a times it's the excitement of others which leads to some what you call a small set of activities, but it just dries away very quickly, because there are no support system, or there are no patrons for this. And in that regard, at least I must be thankful to the management that I have, and the vice chancellor has been extremely open. More than open, I think he sort of encourages certain actions, and he says that let's learn by doing rather than hypothesize and then trying to think through. So I think that really helps, and I really suggest whoever is planning on taking on to this, having an open discussion. And I also mentioned having a plan in conjunction with the top management will definitely make things extremely clear. And now whoever is going to drive this at the operational level can take charge and then move further ahead. But definitely it should be supported from top down.
So essentially, they're not just talking about the vice chancellor. It's really vice chancellor having the ability to make financial decisions because he has the trust and the of the actual people who own these institutions, right?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Okay, let me move. I wonder. I don't want to surprise him, but Anand Rao from IIT Bombay is here. I wonder if he would like to make a little comment.
Sorry, I got delayed because I was stuck in some other
No, that's fine.
activities. So I missed most of the talk, but I'll catch up later. But the title was really exciting to hear about.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for joining, Anand. And let's see who else would like to have a conversation. Anybody else would like to jump in here at this point? Otherwise, we can bid everybody goodbye. We're almost at the end of the hour. So, Michael, would you like to end this session with the help of Nitin?
Again, just to thank everybody for attending for this and every webinar you've been able to attend. Hopefully we can see you or hear, you can hear from us, I guess, another few weeks. And again, thanks to Nitin and all he's done up there in Hubli. And hopefully, again, you draw some inspiration and have learned something from this webinar. So thanks all for attending, and hopefully we'll see you all in a few weeks.
Nitin, from you, last comments from
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I really appreciate IUC for providing this platform. This is my first webinar, and I'm glad that it went well, and hopefully people have gotten what they came here for. Thank you so much.
And also, I would like to, on behalf of Ashok Shettar, because I know him so well, and Nitin Kulkarni, I would like to offer to everybody who's attended this webinar that the campus at Hubli is very, very welcoming. They welcome visitors. I welcome all of you from other colleges and all over India, anywhere in the world, actually, to go there, because there's nothing like seeing this experiment live and talking to the people who are excited about it. So, so on their behalf, I extend this invitation to everybody of you to come and to go and visit Nitin Kulkarni and his gang. Okay, thank you very much, Nitin.
Thank you.
Thank you.